ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Economy Informant, where an article will be discussed to inform you of the latest domestic and international economic updates. And today's video is no different. I would like to discuss the Texas power outage that occurred in mid-February and the economic and physical impact it had on the Texas residents and citizens. I also want to discuss how the Texas government officials, specifically Governor Abbott and Senator Ted Cruz, have failed once again to properly fulfill their task to the residents and citizens, and instead of being accountable and acknowledging their shortcomings as seasoned officials, because both individuals have many years of experience in their positions, they blame an external source like the federal government, or in Ted Cruz's case, his daughter. So let's begin, shall we? 10 years prior, Texas went through a similar situation where a detrimental storm had occurred, and it affected natural gas plants, coal plants, and wind turbines, causing a power outage statewide. Now, at the time, Republican Rick Perry was the governor. It's quite interesting because later on he became the Secretary of Energy, a nationwide responsibility under former President Donald Trump, when he couldn't even oversee and ensure essential policies were made regarding the energy consumption in Texas. Okay. And I know you might say, yay, that is illogical. You are applying the fallacy of composition. Just because he made poor decisions in Texas doesn't mean he will apply that same level of critical thinking in a higher position. You can say it is illogical, but his prior experience, which is why you receive a promotion in the first place in many cases, does not show he is capable, in my opinion, to handle such a job. Some may say that's just him. It doesn't encompass the merits of the Republican Party. Well, now we are in 2021 and this energy problem has still not been fixed. The only common denominator here is the Republican Party. I'm moving along. Several warnings were issued to the Texas officials that the cold weather that would approach Texas could be very problematic. Either the Texas officials underestimated the storm or they didn't want to bother this issue because that would mean they would have to acknowledge that they chose to have its own power grid. Yes, you heard that correctly. You see, in 1935, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Federal Power Act, which tasked a regulatory agency called the Federal Power Commission with overseeing electricity sales that cross state lines. Congress enacted the law in response to market domination and shady business practices by huge utility holding companies during the 1920s and 30s. Texas decided to have their own power grid, giving utility companies the opportunity to not learn from their mistakes and their questionable ethics and essentially distribute and transmit power as they see fit. The Texas government gave them the permission to do what they liked when it came to such a significant necessity in everyday life. And their reasoning, when I say I mean Texas Republicans, was to avoid federal regulation. I agree with James Kenneth, a government professor, that said competition to provide power in the cheapest way possible meant that machinery was not well enough insulated against extreme cold, meaning the utility companies were so worried about their sales, quarterly, annually, etc., that they failed to make the proper tools that customers request their services in the first place. Texas has its own power grid because they do not want to get involved in electrical sales. So please make no mistake to believe Governor Abbott when he said that the power outage was caused, keyword, solely by renewable energy sources like solar and wind. It is simply not true. It is not true because according to Dan Woodfin, the Senior Director of System Operations for ERCOT, though frozen wind turbines were a contributing factor, wind shutdowns accounted for less than 30% of the outages. Also, the still functioning wind farms produced more than they were expected to deliver in winter weather and helped support the grid as fossil fuel plants went offline, according to Texas Monthly. Some believe ERCOT, Electric Reliability Council of Texas, a corporation overseen by the Texas Public Utility Commission, manages the state's power grid is to blame. That again is not true. Because ERCOT's primary responsibility is to distribute power to Texas only, and they failed at that in February, it is understandable to blame such a corporation. However, the grid operators made the decision to cut the power that is distributed because the supply was less than demand, meaning the demand of power was increasing, but the supply could not meet the demand. It was important that the grid operators act fast to decrease the demand of power, because if demand continued to outweigh supply, equipment could have caught on fire, substations could have blown, and power lines could have gone down, which would have caused a dangerous situation for several months. It was the only option because cutting off the power supply to large companies that agreed to do so when such a serious situation occurred didn't work. It is important to realize that if a power outage happened in another state, that state could import power from either the eastern or western energy systems. Okay, ERCOT and the wind turbines are not to blame. Then who or what is to blame for the power outage in Texas in February? Well, like I said before, the only common denominator in this unfortunate crisis is the Republican Party, but specifically politicians in general. As many news outlets have said time and time again, politics has got in the way of the primary duty that elected officials are appointed to do, which is to serve the people and put their needs first. A number of factors contributed to the power outage, but all occurred underneath the guidance and provisions of the elected officials. Whether current or former, all have contributed by not taking accountability and addressing issues before they occur. The economic and physical impact of the power outage include the delay of administering COVID-19 vaccines, like San Antonio City Council member Ana Sandova expressed. Businesses were closed, employees stayed home, income was halted, and more importantly, more than 86 people died during this power outage. I know a lot of information was said in this video, a number of things to process, but I think what I want you to take from this video, that it is imperative that we do our due diligence and vote for state officials that advocate for better health and safety policies and necessities for their people, rather than those elected officials who dodge accountability and result in blaming things that can't even talk, like solar and wind energy. Stop compromising the people's needs to save money. Enough already. Just like San Antonio City Council member Ana Sandova said, this issue of the power grid is bigger than economics. It is life and death issue. The reform that Governor Abbott declared is not good enough. Ted Cruz going to Cancun. Yeah, I bet it was bad timing when photographs were taken. I mean, seriously. But I'm not surprised. I'm just here to tell you how economic decisions can play a huge role in our everyday lives. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion and how the power outage impacted the Texas residents and citizens. I will see you soon.